The very first time that I walked into the Swansea Grand Theatre, I must have been about 7 or 8, and my mother, she brought Philip, my brother Philip, and I on the rickety old train. I always remember they used to go chicka-ta-ching, 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 and every time I've been on a train since, it doesn't make that chicka-ta-ching sound anymore. I used to love that sound from Carmarthen, going past Ferryside through Llanelli with the chicka-ta-ching sound. And we were coming to Swansea for a very special reason, to see a panto. And I'd never seen one before. I'd never been to a theatre in my life before. We couldn't afford the best tickets, the best seats in the house, so we were in what my mother called the gods, which of course I had no idea what she was talking about. So we climbed the many stairs. It seemed to go on forever. And I remember sitting right at the back of the upper circle, looking down onto the stage. And it was just mesmerising. I'd never seen anything, obviously, I'd never seen anything like this in my life. To see things in colour, because we had a black and white TV, so anything we saw, the old films, were always black and white. But this was just so spectacular. It was so magical, and yet so real, but I didn't quite believe my eyes, type of thing. I'd love to remember what the pantomime was, and I'd love to remember who the stars were. I was told so many people over the years it was Morecambe and Wise, since found out by somebody who knows a bit about the theatre. Back in those days, it wasn't them. It could have been Ryan and Ronnie. It could have been so many other big stars. But it doesn't really matter, because what I saw, it just blew me away. My eyes was as big as that, watching this pantomime. And in those days they had the dancing waters. Anybody who might remember that, they had this special water tanks upstage of the old stage that was there. So I must have seen a panto with the old stage, not the one they have today. And they had these water jets that the water used to shoot up and down, and they used to put lights through the water, and it was called the famous dancing waters. But I just thought to myself, I'd love to be involved in something like this. But I was about 7 or 8, so I probably didn't actually say those words, but in my heart I wanted to be on the stage. So if it wasn't for the Swansea Grand and planting that seed within me, I wouldn't have had a life in show business. And I so wanted. How do you get to the Grand, isn't it? How do you get to this stage? How do you do it? I was in school, I played guitar, I learnt songs. I used to imagine that I was a pop star in front of my mother's mirror. But how do you get to here? To be honest with you, I'm 61 now. I can't believe that I have my own shows here. Nowadays, I can't believe that I've performed in pantomime here over the years, myself. So very grateful for that. Very grateful to my mother for bringing us to see the panto back in 67, 68, something like that, on that old rickety train. And it just, as I say, changed my life. It changed my life. It's what I wanted to do. I thought of nothing else. I didn't go to drama school, didn't go to anywhere in London, or didn't have any of those opportunities. I just had dreams, and my dreams came true by walking through the doors of the Swansea Grand. To get to this theatre with your own show was a big deal. And I remember the very first time I came here, it was with a band, and I was here for 2 different shows. I had my own show, didn't sell out or anything, but I remember being so nervous, and with those memories of always wanting to perform at this theatre. This theatre always felt like a big deal to play the Swansea Grand, and it still is. My goodness me, it still is. But I came here, thoroughly enjoyed how the show went. I felt relaxed for my first time in the wings. Nerves, my goodness me, I can't forget to tell you. Someone said, what's your name? I couldn't remember. I was seriously nervous. But as soon as I got on that stage, there's a sense of intimacy on that stage. It's a huge stage, actually, in the wings. But I just felt at home. And I came back then with a show called A Tribute to Mario Lanza, Be My Love. Wow, I mean, what a show that was. And to bring that to the Swansea Grand was a real joy. And if I'm honest, I only ever did that show to keep my father happy, because my father liked Mario Lanza, my mother was the rock and roller. So I've always been interested in both genres, really. But that was a great feeling to stand on there and sing songs like Be My Love, Nessun Dorma, The Loveliest Night of the Year, Because You're Mine, Because, the drinking song. It goes on forever, all the Mario Lanza stuff, you know. But it really was something very, very special. And you get a funny feeling on this stage, as you would on most old theatres, but all the huge stars that have stood on X marks the spot, you know what I mean? So, yeah, there probably is a few ghosts here. And for some reason, I wouldn't be frightened to meet them either. Pantomime. Oh boy. I'm now celebrating, I believe, 31 years in panto. And my first ever pantomime was at the New Theatre in Cardiff with Victor Spinetti. So that's a long time ago now. But I always knew that Swansea Grand would be round the corner for me to fulfil my dream of being in panto at the Swansea Grand. Well, before I played here, I played many theatres, like the Hippodrome Theatre in Birmingham and the Mayflower Theatre in Southampton, and they're huge venues, you know, seating round about 2,500 people. And my agents in London each year would offer me, you know, the panto. I could never say where I was going. And then one year they picked the phone up and they said, how do you fancy doing the Swansea Grand? Well, come on. Can you imagine how excited I was? I believe the first time I did panto here was the year 2000. I had to wait until then. And it was great. It was my old pal, Kev Johns. And it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The script was hilariously funny, written by the Simmons brothers, I think. And that was my first ever time here with Kev Johns. He was playing Dame, of course. And I loved it. And then the following year, I was elsewhere. And then I started to creep back. Then I was here like almost every year. And I think Kevin and I worked really well together. And we often laughed together, Kevin and I, of a time when it was Jack and the Beanstalk. And of course he was my mam, and I was playing Jack. And we used to change the script nearly every performance. And not only were the audience laughing, but we made ourselves laugh on stage as well, which it was just a joy. And then a pantomime came along that would really change my life, and it happened right here at the Swansea Grand Theatre. The then producers of the panto said to me, "It's about time you were in frocks." And I went, "What?" "Yep, you got to start playing Dame." I said, "I'm not ready for that. I'm really not ready for that." I could see all the hard work that Kevin Johns was putting into it, with the makeup and the lipstick and the eyes and the wigs and the bras and the heels and the underdress, and not for me, you know. What would my father think of me? Anyway, all jokes aside, it was to play Ugly Sister alongside Kevin Johns at this theatre, Cinderella, of course. Oh boy, I was so nervous, thinking, what's it going to be like? It was hard in the rehearsals. It was hard. It's playing something that I've never done before, because I've always been the idle Jack and the Buttons and the Silly Billies. But now I'm Ugly Sister, which of course is the baddie, which I've never done. But anyway, we opened, and it was a huge success, and I loved every minute of it. And I always say that I didn't feel like I was playing a woman, a comedic role. It wasn't until the wig hit my head, I put the lipstick on and all the makeup on and the eyelashes and everything, which I had to have help with at the time. And when that wig got on my head, I simply became my mother. Do you know what? I often get asked, what's it like, with people who don't perform, what's it like standing on stage with all those people, you know, staring at you, with the responsibility of keeping them all interested for 2 hours? Well, I think it's harder waiting in the wings. It's like being at the dentist and knowing that you're next to have a tooth out, So that's, for me, it's harder. It's more. There's more stage nerves. I'm even stuttering, thinking about waiting in the wings. But once you walk out and you get that applause, you get to centre stage, it's just a whole new thing. You're in charge, you have to be, don't you? But I always remember Danny LaRue telling me, don't go straight, darling, don't go straight to the microphone. He said, you're far too quick getting to the microphone. He says, come on, stage left or stage right, and let them look at you. And he's so right. And I still do that to this day. I come on, I stand still, I say, hi, everybody. And he said, get them to like you. He said, get them to like you. Let them look at the frock, or the suit, of course. So, it's a great feeling. And here, as I say, but it feels intimate. I remember the first time I did it, it took a while to get that intimacy, because you kind of give it so much respect. And as your eyes get accustomed to the dark, you notice to see people's faces popping out the boxes left and right, And the worst, you've committed the cardinal sin. We all do it when you're not used to working theatre. You work to the stalls, and you're like this, I always notice that when I go and watch a young comedian, starting off. They're just working the front row, just working the front row like this. But of course there's people there, they're there, but they're up there. When my mum took Philip and I, right up there in the gods. So to take in the whole theatre is a great, great feeling. It really is. And I feel very privileged that I've been given that opportunity in my life to witness that experience, to have that experience of standing centre stage and taking in the whole of the auditorium. It really is something special to this day. Having done a bit of West End, I played the Big Bopper in the musical Buddy at the Victoria Palace in London. I also played Vince Fontaine and the Teen Angel at the Dominion Theatre in London. So I've got a bit of experience now, and with that kind of huge ensemble piece. Well, a very well-known man from Swansea, a wonderful artist in his own right, a great recording artist and playwright, Mal Pope. He speaks to a man called Michael Bogdanov, a Shakespearean director. And they came to see me in my house because they wanted to talk to me about a musical play that Mal Pope had written called Contender. It was indeed the life and times of the rags to riches to rags story of Tommy Farr, famous boxer who fought Joe Louis in 1937 in Yankee Stadium in New York. And they wanted me to play this boxer. And Michael Bogdanov, who I absolutely adore that man, and such a sad loss to us all that he's no longer with us. But he got me and I got him, kind of thing. But in the very beginning, he could just see Mike Doyle's buttons. So he says, we're getting Mike Doyle, who normally plays buttons, to play Tommy Farr. So how do I get from buttons to playing Tommy Farr? Well, Mal Pope could see it, and he wanted me to play that role. For the first 3 months, before we even got on a stage or a rehearsal room, I had to go to boxing school. And Mario Macronelli, also no longer with us, God rest him, and of course his son Enzo, I trained with them, and Mario taught me how I might look if I could box. I certainly can't box, but it was a tough training regime. And I believe that I think it was BBC or one of the ITV followed us as a documentary and to showing how the training went. But the training was up at Bonamine Boxing School, which is still there to this day, I believe. And Enzo was there once or twice, and they got me into some kind of, boxing lifestyle. I also went to the Prince of Wales boxing school, down in the Bay in Cardiff. Whew, boy, it was tough, really, really tough. So once I got the boxing and the skipping and all this kind of stuff under my belt, what I thought was under my belt, then came the rehearsals. There was a 5 to 6 week rehearsal period for this enormous show called Contender. And Peter Carey was also in it. He played my trainer in it, and a brilliant artist, amazing singer, great guy. And we had 5 to 6 weeks of rehearsals. And I'm never late, can't be late. And I remember rehearsal starting at 10. I was down the Bay in Cardiff at 8 with a cup of coffee, learning my lines, going through the routines in my head, going through the songs in my head. Because all 100% organic. Mal wrote the whole thing. And I'd be there at 10 o'clock start. I'd be standing on the rehearsal floor at 10:02, waiting to start, you know, because everybody else had training, acting ability. You know, I just had panto and a few bits in the West End, so I didn't consider myself an actor. But I took to it. I really took to it. With the help of Michael Bogdanov and a few of my friends within it, I pulled it off. Anyway, we opened at the Swansea Grand, didn't we? A theatre that I knew and loved. And Mario Macanelli turned up for that opening night. We were rammed to the rafters. Everybody coming to see Buttons play a box. Well, my mum and dad were there that night, and it was an amazing piece that Mal had written, and it's only a shame that it didn't go much further. We toured all over Wales, but a lot of people said that this could be something that the West End would have enjoyed, and it could have gone a lot further. But for the time that it did run, I did the whole run and absolutely enjoyed every single second of it. It worked so well here on this stage, Contender. And if I'm honest, it's where it worked the best. Out of all the theatres we played in Wales, this is where it really felt the real deal, you know. So I'm very grateful to Mal for giving me that opportunity. And from time to time, I still play some of the songs from that. So good, you know, so brilliant. Everything made sense. Absolutely everything made sense. And yeah, as I say, I'll be eternally grateful for that opportunity to play Tommy Farr. Of course, nowadays, I will come back to this theatre with my now show that tours. It's called Rocking with Laughter. And it's a real joy to bring that type of show here to the Grand, and indeed to wherever else we tour the show. It's a 70s music style show with comedy, Rocking with Laughter. Not a bad title for the show, I don't think. Stephanie Webber is on the show with us also, a great artist, and I have a great kicking live band. And I'd love to see more of that happening here at the Grand. You know, remember one point I'd looked at the forward planner, because when you're in the panto here, they have a great big calendar that sits on the wall outside the crew room, and it showed everything that was coming to the Grand. You know, they'd block out for the operas and the ballets or whatever they had, and then they'd be one-nighters. This theatre, I think, over the years has done brilliantly, really. It's so diverse. This, you know, one minute you have a stand-up comic like a Rob Brydon, for argument's sake, and then the next night you'd have a rock band like Slade played here once, I think, and then it'd be blocked out then for 2 weeks, and there's a huge opera on here or whatever. Then you'd come back and there might be something local that's on here, like an amateur dramatics kind of thing. Then there'd be a play, and then all sorts of different things that they have here. And of course now with Swansea having this brand new arena, I was worried, if I'm honest. I was worried at first, but I think it's a good thing now. I really do. I think it's a good thing, because it seems to work in Cardiff, doesn't it? They've got many venues there, And I think it'll do exactly the same thing here. It'll find its own niche, I think. So I hope that the Grand will continue with its one-nighters. I hope that a 7 or 8 young kid will come through the door, watch his or her first panto, have the same dreams as I had, and they'll not be sat in this seat telling much the same story. But it's a beautiful old theatre. It really is. And it's a family here. Everybody that works here loves the place. Theatre manager here, Grant, an absolute top man with a huge heart who just loves theatre through and through. And I'm so glad that he is now the theatre manager here. So, all the very best to you, Grant. And I wish anybody who comes along to work on this stage every success, because it really is one of the nicest theatres to work. There's an atmosphere from that stage that you don't just get everywhere. You do get it in other theatres too. New Theatre, I love that down in Cardiff. I love it with all my heart. But I love this one too. And every success to you, Swansea Grand. Every success. Do you know, sometimes I think, how did I get here? Don't come from a showbiz family. My brother Philip is also a comedian, does very, very well. But how did I get here then? So, I didn't do very well at school, and I remember being told by a teacher once that I wouldn't amount to nothing. And I've never forgotten that. I mean, I even said it the first time I ever came to this theatre, the Swansea Grand, and I walked out. I thought, you'll amount to nothing, and here I am, look, the Swansea Grand. But I've been very, very fortunate, I went for opportunity knocks, and Bob Monkhouse really helped me a great deal, got me a job as a warm-up man at the studios in London for the Opportunity Knocks series. And they filmed me. Bob wrote loads of material for me, and then they asked me if I'd like to go on to the show. Well, I went on to the show, won my heat, and I came back and came second in the final. So you'll amount to nothing, he said. And then I went on to meet the royal family at Buckingham Palace, thinking of that teacher telling me I'd amount to nothing. As I walked through the doors of Buckingham Palace and the Royal Variety performance, you'll amount to nothing, he said, and there I am on the stage of the Royal Variety performance, and I did that 3 times. The West End. And I always used to think that you'll amount to nothing, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because if there's anybody there who just thinks that, well, I've been told I'm no good, I've been told I'm not good enough, or I'm not good looking enough, I'm not skinny enough, it's not anything enough. You really are. You really are. And you have to believe in yourself, I think. And if I didn't have imagination, I couldn't do anything. And that's the truth. I'm letting you into a little inner secret there. Because I'm actually quite a shy guy, really, and I still have disbelief. You've only got to talk to my manager about that. He's forever telling me that that I can, you can. But sometimes I don't believe enough. But once I visualise me doing something, I think it tricks the brain into thinking you've done it once before. But that's how I do it, because I've had no training or anything, but I've had a good crack at everything that's come my way. But being told you'll amount to nothing, and then looking at the fact I've had my own television series, done 31 years in pantomime, 44 years in show business, 40 years in the cruise ship industry, you'll amount to nothing. That's what he said. Well, he was wrong.